Speaking of conversations like this one, we're going to transition into a conversation now about conversations, a conversation about conversations, a little meta. Thanksgiving is around the corner. It's Thanksgiving week, and Ryan and I wanted to talk a little bit about what it's like to talk to people at Thanksgiving.
Or we could give people advice on how to talk to people who are wrong about stuff, since all day long, here we are talking to people who are wrong about stuff and doing it in a civil way.
Yes.
Because that's what you're going to have to be doing Thursday at the dinner table, because you can try to avoid it, which is probably the best path forward. But if you can't, what's your strategy for when you wind up next to a woke aunt or a liberal uncle, and they want to talk about Russia, they want to talk about Trump, they want to talk about whatever they want to talk about? How do you
I think we have a problematic bias in this case because we're here for the reason that we enjoy those types of conversations. And so I've never honestly really ever thought about how to talk to people that disagree necessarily, like in my family or like a Thanksgiving type context, because I like that. I don't have the sort of like typical aversion to talking about politics or religion, because I think that's how you connect with people in the strongest types of ways. Like when you're able to have a really civil conversation about politics and religion, that means that you're connecting with a person in a healthy, deep way. And I really, honestly, just personally enjoy that. But the more that I think about it, the more that you have to, I think it's the bottom line is that you have to fundamentally, like on a very human base level, respect the person and like the person, and genuinely believe that they are just as human as you are and they've come to those conclusions for just as human reasons. And that's where it has to start. And if you don't have that, I just don't see what the point is. Like if you think that the other person is fundamentally a bad human being, like if you're talking to an actual, there are some really like touching stories about people who've talked to like actual neo-Nazis, KKK members, changed their minds through kindness, et cetera. I think that's really going to be a rarity. And if you're talking to somebody who's genuinely a bad person, you're probably not going to change their mind.
Do you have some liberals in your family?
Definitely. I don't know.
Left, liberal, progressive. Like where do your blue members of your family fall down?
My part of my family is sort of working class, Milwaukee, like union.
Pro-union?
Yeah, Democrats, Catholic Democrats. And it's pretty much across the spectrum, as I imagine a lot of people's families are now. I imagine that's the same for your family, Pennsylvania, rural areas.
A bunch of Oklahoma. There are a lot of Republicans out there, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Well, how do you deal with, I mean, some of this is just based on, without getting personal, what I know in your family, some of this is probably very personal, like like people's politics are important to them for legitimate reasons.
For everybody. For others, it's kind of seems more like entertainment and like as fired up as they are. What I have found, and what tends to work is that the less partisan you are, the more you can have a political conversation, and what you can also do, but that doesn't mean don't be ideological and don't have a viewpoint, but don't make it a blue versus red, or even conservative versus liberal thing. If you can make it top versus bottom, that's always the easiest. But if you can also usually identify villains that you have in common with somebody. I've noticed that, so like for years, the Republicans in my family were pretty supportive of the right wing of their party and also their party leadership. That has changed recently. Now you can kind of have your yucks about Mitch McConnell, or make fun of dearly departed Paul Ryan, or if they've heard of Kevin McCarthy yet. You can identify figures that they consider rhinos or something like that.
Yeah.
You can have fun with them. But for years, the corporate Democrats were such a nice, ripe target.
Right.
That was an easy thing to kind of bond over, and you could, and then go from there and say, look, the things that you're saying are actually the things that the left has the same critique, but here's the left solution. Like with healthcare, you can often do that one, because the right when it comes to healthcare, and I bet you're happy to admit this, doesn't really have a solution.
No, it's one of the biggest failures of the Republican Party of the last 20 years, yeah.
Because no solution works within an honest kind of right-wing free market frame that also covers everybody.
That's absolutely true.
You just can't do it.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. And so
you know who learned that? Mitt Romney.
Yes, and he was like, well, I guess we'll have to do the kind of left-wing market weird combination thing that's going to involve a lot of subsidies that eventually, if you leave it alone long enough, should basically evolve into like a single-payer thing, as like the Medicare and insurance companies, collude together on pricing, and then they become single payers eventually. Like that's where a system rationally grows in that direction, and so you can reach people, I think, in kind of a rational way, like that. Say, like, you hate these things. Here's what your folks say you should do that wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Here's what the left is saying, and then you have to allow for, okay, what are the criticisms of that? And as long as you're open to the criticisms of it, then usually you can keep it kind of you can keep it kind of kosher, like keep it kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point, because I do think I don't ever see these conversations as like vehicles for persuasion necessarily. And I also feel like that's
it's
helpful.
Just for having a conversation.
You should like genuinely be interested in what the other person has to say. And I think that's a huge secret to Sagar and Crystal's success. And another huge, like, none of this works if, and this was probably the biggest handicap of Crossfire back in the day on CNN, which I think actually had a lot of merits despite how ridiculous it became at times. The biggest handicap was that you really did have red and blue. It was Democrat and Republican. It wasn't conservative and liberal. It was Democrat and
partisan
Republican.
talking points versus partisan talking points.
Exactly, like literal talking points in certain cases. And that's not really going to get you very far, because you always have to create double standards to justify what one of the parties is doing. Like, obviously, we know people in power are problematic, regardless of what little party they identify with. But you should really just genuinely be interested in what the other person has to say.
Yeah.
And if you're having a conversation that you're like willingly entering into, not that if one's forced on you, this is different, but like you should be genuinely
or you could
interested.
force it on them because they're right next to you.
One of the biggest, like, I haven't been around journalism, I don't mean, I know I make jokes about Ryan being old, this is not one of them, as long as you have, but one of the early lessons that I learned very fast was how important humility is to journalism, because you're constantly trafficking in facts that change, arguments that change, information that changes, frankly, because things move so quickly. And your arguments are never going to be static from point A to point B over the course of 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And that necessarily means you have to communicate in a way that reflects the reality. Things will change, you will change. And so to have conversations, whether you're in the public sphere or just at a Thanksgiving dinner table, as though you definitely have the truth on your side. And I would say this even in a conversation, I'm 100% sure I have the truth on my side when it comes to a very personal political issue. Let's say, for instance, transgender ideology. Like, I am 100% on that. I feel very confident. If you're talking to
not bringing that up at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, don't do that.
Not going to abortion either. Anyway,
no, that's fair. But if I'm talking to another person who also feels that way, I assume that they feel that way for very legitimate reasons, and that they also are very confident in their evidence, and that they have been thoughtful about it, and that they believe that for reasons that comport with their own moral compass. And this isn't to say truth is relative, because I'm also pretty much 100% sure that it's not. But
have you seen any political evolution on your union-loving, working-class Democratic family out there?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I would say.
Do they watch? Or are you allowed to speak freely? Or?
Well, I don't want to speak for people who.
Tell me you're talking about a different aunt.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've noticed that in general in Wisconsin, though, one of the biggest signs in 2016, I was actually rollerblading, super rural area in northern Wisconsin, and it wasn't just like Trump signs, like little yard signs. It was homemade.
Side of the barn. Like
giant plywood, handmade, hand-painted Trump stuff. Have you noticed any change?
Let's see. One of my uncles, he's definitely gotten more right-wing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Any Hispanic change?
Democrats have gotten more. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I have a bunch of in-laws down in South Florida, as you know, and the Hispanic television down there, Spanish language TV is wild. Like,
well, Maria Elvira Salazar is actually a representative. Like, came from Univision and is now a like pretty MAGA representative.
I mean, talking to one relative, and he was spouting all of this like Q adjacent stuff, and we're like, so you're into Q now? Is that what I'm getting? He's like, what's Q?
Yeah.
Like, had no idea. But a lot of the Spanish language news shows have taken kind of the outlines of it, stripped the Q out of it and some of the crazy, but like are still feeding all the rest of it in a way that I think is more disorienting to our politics than people understand. So that is actually and that's the kind of thing that's nice to like find out as a journalist, to like, because like otherwise I don't have a whole lot of entree into how that's affecting regular people who are watching those programs.
That's so true, that and this is like, if there are journalists watching, that's one of the most important things about like going and getting out of Washington, or like even just out of the news cycle for a little bit and talking to other people. Man, like
it's crazy out there.
The biggest bias in media is working in media. Once you sort of get out of the news cycle, you realize that people have a whole lot of other concerns that aren't whatever Ben Collins just tweeted.
Yeah. Who's Ben Collins?
He's the like dystopia guy at NBC News.
Oh yeah.
He was very upset about Twitter recently.
Yeah. I did see that. Yes.
All right. Well, we hope everybody has an enjoyable Thanksgiving. None of this is to say you should be bringing up politics, but if you want to, I mean, there's a way to do it with it being very constructive. And I think the narrative that like you must stay away from religion and politics, you don't have to obsess over it. But I feel like you can have really constructive, healthy relationship conversations through it.
And maybe you can move people.
That's right. Maybe you can.
Know.
You never know. I think you've changed my opinion on several things.
There we go.
All right. Maybe we'll get into that sometime, or maybe we won't.
Be too embarrassing. I can't admit it.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.